Space, the final frontier. Space Station Ashland sits on the edge of Federation space with its companion ship, the USS DilamusChristian. The space around them is full of mystery and strange wonders, where secrets are kept and danger lurks around every corner. The crew of the DilamusChristian must navigate treacherous waters as they work to protect the Federation. But as they peer into the unknown, they will discover that the line between friend and foe is not always clear. They will be tested like never before and will face challenges that will push them to their limits. Join us on this adventure as we explore the farthest reaches of space and uncover the hidden truths that lie within the shadows. Tabletop Journeys presents Star Trek Preservations.
Welcome, travelers. My name is Lee Wanika, and I am the GM for Star Trek Preservations. We are back with the crew of the USS DilamusChristian and our amazing cast of role players taking on their various roles. Without further ado, I am going to have them introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joe Harney, and I am playing Captain Sabian Tobor, the commanding officer of the USS DilamusChristian, a Saber-class Federation starship.
Hi, I'm Adam Scaramella, and I portray Lieutenant Commando Ocean Chazilwer, the DilamusChristian's Andorian First Officer.
Hi, my name is David Rideout. I'm playing Lieutenant Evidian Tanari, the Andorian Chief Engineer of the DilamusChristian, and I've recently just gotten the T-Cog installed in the engines, and our new phrase for going into warp is transform and roll out.
Hi, my name is Lacey Knutson, and I'm playing Lieutenant Narela Nilan, the very brave science officer of the DilamusChristian.
Thank you all. We are about to kick off episode 2 of season 3. I will start with a brief recap of our previous episode, as well as where we are in the overall storyline, and then we'll move right into today's action. To recap so far, after the attack at Aslan Station and the reappearance of Species Epsilon in a very dramatic and dangerous way, a lot of things took place in the wake of that battle. There were several Species Epsilon ships in their flotilla that left/escaped, allowed to leave based on not escalating the threat, that are out there that need to be found. In addition to that, it seems that command of Aslan Station has been turned over, or more accurately, that Commodore Pritchard has been removed from command of Aslan Station. As we start this adventure some months later, a permanent replacement has yet to be chosen. The previous XO of the station is still in command. The Regional Starfleet Intelligence Command is still present, and the station is operating as it should, but there is no one directive force at this point. Missions are being assigned through standard protocols, and that's where we come in today, as the DilamusChristian is on one of these standard missions that, quite honestly, why the station is in this area of space and why the DilamusChristian has been assigned to this area of space. So we begin Season 3, Episode 2, Shadow of the Storm.
Captain's Log, Stardate 59272.3173. The DilamusChristian has arrived at the Talarian colony of Dovrek III in response to an urgent request for assistance. The colony recently deployed an orbital solar shade to counteract extreme solar radiation, but something has gone wrong. Violent storms are tearing through the planet's atmosphere, and local infrastructure is failing. Administrator Mavor has welcomed our aid, cautiously, but it is clear that not all members of the colony's leadership share his sentiment. Our priority is to determine the cause of the storms as quickly as possible, as the storms are intensifying. If we do not act soon, the colony may not survive.
At this point, what the crew is aware of as far as what's going on with Dowdell Station and Commodore Pritchard over the last 3 months is just the information that I gave in the recap. Just before you pull out of warp, we're going to go around the bridge and see what everybody may have wanted to be working in prep for arriving at Dovrek III.
I think we'd probably have senior staff in the conference room, like a 15-minute huddle up before we come out of warp, make sure everyone gets on the same page, right?
I agree that's where we're going to end up, but I wanted to know if anybody wanted to do anything in prep for that 15-minute huddle, and then you'll discuss what you were doing in the huddle. That way, if there's information you wanted to find out or know, this is where you would get that information and bring it to the meeting. Lieutenant Tenari.
There's nothing in particular that I'm bringing to the meeting, but on the trip here, I believe there was one task that I had yet to complete from last season, which is adjusting the epsilon sensors for the internal sensors of the DilamusChristian. So that is probably what I was working on the way here.
Good point. And I think the answer is we should probably set that up. Did we have that task already set up, or did we not have that task set up yet?
I do not think so.
Okay. Because I believe when that task was originally assigned, when we knew that was a thing to do, we were still using the 1E Senate task resolution. So it had not been updated. But because we had not even started that particular task, I don't know if we got anything together. So with all the information you have currently, I would say that is definitely going to be a work track of 20. I think that the difficulty on that task will be a 3. The resistance will be 2, and the complication range is the standard 20.
Okay.
Given that as what you were working on prior to, I think this is as good a time as any to put in a roll to see how things have been going over the last couple months on this project.
Okay. Before I spend anything, what's our starting threat for this adventure?
Starting threat is going to be 2 per player. So we are starting with the standard 8.
All right. And I will be able to get an assist from the ship, correct?
That is correct.
And because she helped me create the sensors, could I get an assist from Neelan?
Absolutely.
All right. Then I will spend a threat for an extra dice. And I have the Epsilon species detection focus. And I think since I'm working on the equipment itself, probably control engineering.
That makes sense.
All right. First of all, procedural compliance. So I can put one of those dice aside for a success. And I have a 10 and a 6, so that's 3 successes. Lieutenant Neelan, if you would like to roll to assist.
Absolutely. Am I also doing control engineering, or is control science okay from that other insight?
I would say control science would be fine.
All right. So I rolled a 10, which makes it.
Excellent. So we've got 4 total successes. And Adam, would you be kind enough to roll for the DC?
Absolutely.
Can we do a sensor security, since it's an internal security sensors?
I think that would be appropriate, yeah.
All right, that gives us 15.
Okay, I rolled a 6.
Excellent. So that is 5 successes, which generates 2 momentum.
Then I have 1 bonus momentum because of intense. And Joe, again, how much momentum is it to get over the resistance?
So, and then this is the first time we're doing it in second edition, when you succeed at a extended task, you determine the impact you have on the task, and that impact is equal to your department that you used in your task roll. And it may be modified by talents and or spending momentum.
Yeah, I have an engineering of 4.
And I believe it's 2 momentum for every additional impact.
And the resistance reduces my impact?
Correct.
So that means currently we have an impact of 2. That comes off the track of 20, correct?
Correct.
An additional progress is a repeatable action. It is not an immediate action, so you can't spend threat for it. But during an extended task, you may add 1 to your impact for every 2 momentum spent.
All right. And Lee, how much momentum did we generate minus my intense?
2 are generated, and then you got a bonus 1 for your talent feature.
All right, then let me spend the bonus and 1 regular momentum to take 3 off the track.
All right. Leaving you with 1 momentum and a total of 9 threat. Okay. You put in a couple months of work. You are making progress. It's a bit slow going. It's more of an issue with just integrating, and there's a lot of places. Basically, there's work that needs to be done at nearly every emitter. And on a small ship with a small amount of crew dedicated to the project because of everything else that needs to happen, it's just something that it takes time. But you put some months in, and they're getting good work done. We are going to move over to our science officer, Lieutenant Nealon. After the battle in the months that followed, your team that had separated from the DC, led by Lieutenant Dory, they have completed their experiments successfully. So they have some good information that will add to the overall work of the science department in various arenas. Is there anything in specific you are looking to do, or would you want to just see if you can shepherd the crunching of the numbers and the raw data to see if you can turn that into something that's particularly effective versus various subspace distortions and study?
I think that I would really like to kind of crunch some of that data broadly first and then use that to guide what I want to drill into.
Okay, sounds good. So your difficulty based on the quality of the data that was received is only going to be a 2, no extended complication. The ship will certainly assist, and that would be a computers sensors kind of role.
Computer sensors for the ship,
Yep,
and for me can be a reason science.
yes,
Can I buy a die with threat?
you certainly can. It is rare that I say no to that request.
And then because of that, I can use untapped potential. I'm just trying to remember exactly what that does.
So if you buy a die with momentum or threat, you roll a d20. And if you roll equal to or under the attribute you used, you gain a bonus momentum. And if you roll over, Lee gets a threat.
Okay.
Yeah, and great catch, Adam. I meant to say computers science for the ship.
Okay, so I have good news on my roll and bad news. I have 2 successes, and then I also rolled a 20 on that third die.
But you bought that extra die with a threat, so your bold science allows you to reroll.
Okay. Let me re-roll. Okay, not a 20 on the reroll, which is excellent, but I think oh, it does pass. So it's 14. I think I had to get under 15.
All right, so you have 3 successes, which would equate to 1 momentum.
Then I have to roll that d20 to see if we do momentum or threat, right?
Yep.
Correct.
All right, and that was a 9.
So we get a bonus momentum.
Yep. All right, so we have 3 momentum. We are at 10 threat.
Very close to
And
Ari there.
yeah, very close to Zanari. The good news here is the numbers come up. You've got usable data, effectively creating +1 trait in any element of research that the ship is going to assist in regards to subspace anomalies, issues, and research. That is a very positive move forward in this area of study. And as far as where you'd like to go with that information, you have Tenari, who's working on sensors to pick those out. And with this information, you definitely have good study of the anomalies themselves, some of their mutagenic effects and how that impacts species, with the knowledge that effectively that weapon that you were facing that fortunately did not fire off was really designed less towards damage, though it would definitely cause that, more towards creating survivors who would then be more susceptible to possession by the entity. So understanding that process a little bit better is where you have some information. So what would you like to do with that kind of detail?
I feel like a good teammate would be helping the engineering department, but I actually really want to learn more about the mutagenic effects and how it's affecting the human or the person.
Excellent. So with this is going to be a big project. Difficulty of 3 as well. That work track is going to be 24. And your resistance on this one is going to be a 3 as well. So this is going to be harder research, but no extended complication range at this stage.
Great. Can you remind me of how resistance affects the rolls?
Yeah,
As
so
long as you succeed on a task for an extended task, you create an impact. Your impact is a static number, and that static number is the department you, as the primary roller, are using. So if you're using science, your impact is your science score less the resistance.
Okay.
So it can vary when you do a task depending on what department you're using. Your assistants can use whatever they want, but it's always the primary person's department that counts as far as what the impact is.
and then I know, Lacey, your character had a first edition talent that is no longer applicable in second edition. There's another science talent that's similar to the concept of the one you had called intense scrutiny. And so if you ever use reason or control as part of an extended task, you ignore that resistance.
Oh, that's really great because I think you had suggested it and I have added it to my character sheet, intense scrutiny.
Right. So your impact, instead of being reduced to 1, would remain at 4 on this. So it'll essentially take you 1/4 of the amount of time and effort to keep working on this. Instead of hitting 1 pip each time, you're now hitting 4 pips.
That is amazing.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
Milan really seems to me to be someone who could really get super intense when studying something. I think even role playing level, even the name of the talent is like super evocative.
Yeah, I like it a lot because I see Norella getting lost in the science if she has the opportunity, just falling right into it.
Absolutely. All right. So with that, you've crunched some data, you've got some things in place. You have a long-term project, season-long kind of project that you can be working on as far as really getting some useful information out of all of that. The data crunch is what you've been working on over the last couple months, getting to the right place. As we're approaching this particular mission, we're going to move on to the EXO, see what he's got going on.
Thanks. A couple quick questions. How much time has actually passed since the battle at Aslan Station? Are we talking months, or are we talking a couple days, like a week or so?
So the Battle of Aslan Station started on December 30th, 31st.
Okay, so it has been
It,
about 5 months.
yeah. So it has been 5 months at this point.
Okay.
In that time, and I will add this now because it probably more impacts your character and things that Commander Tobor may choose to deal with. A few very specific things have happened. One, your former chief of security, Lieutenant Najir, has taken on a job with Regional Command through Starfleet Intelligence. He is heading up a department to handle long-term investigations from their standpoint. In effect, he has become your liaison in your official investigations. If you're using some of your clandestine contacts, you may not necessarily want to involve him in that. But as far as any official investigations that you're engaged with that need to be bubbled up to Starfleet Intelligence, he would be your contact at regional command. He is not your superior in any way, but he's
Mhm.
just a person in charge of that team within the organization. So basically, he would also, based on your reports to him, assign regional command resources to follow up on things or to put ears in places you deem are necessary. So if you say, I would really like to have better eyes on location X, he would be the person that assigns somebody to go to X to get those extra eyes and provide you with more information down the road. So that's one of the things that has taken place in these 3 months. The other thing that has taken place in these 3 months is one of the Aegis teams went to a planet in an effort to assist a science team that basically stopped reporting in. As it turns out, there was a plague on that planet, and they were able to save and retrieve the science team. It turns out that planet was a pre warp civilization. And there are a lot of redacted things about that mission, but the lead scientist is on a Starfleet watch list as a wanted person. Details as to why and what, but you have dossiers on that individual. Another Aegis team mission that would be important to note because it's a real big benefit. It's actually why your team got the call on this mission is a small regional power not connected to the Talarians had a transition of power after an assassination attempt by crazy means. Somebody engineered a series of earthquakes on a seismically active planet, and the leadership, the emperor and empress of that world, they actually were killed. Normally that wouldn't happen because there's a lot of early warning, a lot of high tech that would avoid that, but it turns out that system was sabotaged, so they did not get the warning and they ended up dying. The power has transitioned to their son, their heir, and that heir needed help. The Aegis team assisted them rooting out the assassins in this case. And in a very public display, there was a battle with basically a sword fight between the assassin and the heir apparent, and two guards, or two, the phrase for a person that assists or stands aside their liege in that type of situation. I can't think of the name.
Their second.
Yeah, their second.
Talking about like a major domo or a prime minister?
More like an aide de camp kind of thing. It's more like basically I get three, you get three kind of thing. One of those was an exchange Klingon officer, and there's a big fight. The heir apparent won, and because of the aid that Starfleet was able to provide, declared that they would engage in further and better talks with the Federation, further solidifying their position. And the fact that the whole region got to see Starfleet help in such a public way has generally added to the benefit. More cultures are trusting Starfleet just a little bit more. And it's basically because of that that the Talarian colony basically reached out. What is now, as the captain indicated, conditionally, would have previous to that event been a no. They might not have reached out. You might have got the call when it was too late versus, hey, can you look at this? We might need your help thing.
Okay. A couple of the questions that were on my plate were, what did happen with the Michael Collins mission? Are they still out there, or are they back and the information's been provided to command, or are they still out into potentially danger?
They are still out there.
Okay.
They have been reporting back and providing information along the way. They are entering the actual system as you're getting to this mission where the actual origin is. So they don't have information to report as of yet, but that is happening concurrently.
Okay. And I would be maintaining the communications that I have set up with the other exos in the patrol group.
Okay.
Both to keep a tab on where everybody is and make sure we all know where each other are, whether or not any of us needs help, that whole kind of thing. And also to get a sense of the other's crew's reaction to Pritchard being pulled out of his position.
That is a good question. I would say that would definitely fall under a presence command role. And I think in general, I'm going to call the average difficulty on this one a 2. But I am going to extend the complication range versus which basically means you'll get some variances in the quality of information if you hit a complication range. And the reason I say that is there are some commands in the group that are going to be better than others. But your question is going to go out to everybody, and what you get back and what you is going to be slightly different. I would also say you could choose, if you wanted to, also do this as a insight command as well.
No, I'm going to do this as I like the answers that I think I would get better from insight than I do with presence. It's a lower roll for me, but I think I'm going to go with that.
Okay. From a complication range, presence would have been more room for complication than insight, because that would have been less I'm just trying to figure out what you're saying versus I'm listening to what you're saying. So your complication range, had you gone with presence, would have actually been 17, 18, 19, 20 to reflect that. Your complication range based on using insight is going to be a 19 and 20. So there's
Okay.
still room for some complication, but significantly less because you're gauging reactions for truth versus taking what they say at their word.
So I'm looking at my focuses to see what, because I'm not trying to take charge of this conversation. I'm more trying to provide what we have. I'm trying to present myself as an example of how we think we should be doing that. So I don't know if that would be a good focus for this.
What
So
focuses do you have to play with?
that is one of them, lead by example.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, that would work.
okay. I will an extra die with a threat.
Love it.
I rolled 2 successes, and what do we say? Command. And one of them is a critical, which is a 3. So that would be 3 successes.
Excellent. To give you 1 momentum for a total of 4 momentum, and we now have 11 threat.
Okay.
Yeah, generally speaking, most of the XOs are surprised by this. XOs that you know of are in the know, such as your dear friends at the Faraday. She's frustrated. There's a question as to who's going to take the position, and that seems to be at issue. Nobody knows who that individual is going to be yet, and that could be, for those who are deep in the know that were tight with Pritchard and his group, that could be an issue. There's a lot of fear amongst the XOs. Is there going to be an excision of those who may have been previously linked to Pritchard? Will they find that this group starts to get spread out? Nothing has happened yet because nobody has been assigned, but there are fears of the wrangling going on. And in fact, there hasn't even been any scuttlebutt as to who's quote unquote in the running thus far. At least none of the XOs are expressing that to you.
Okay. And the third thing that I want to look into is I want to see what information we have about the Talarian officials and people that we're going to be working with to see what I can arrange the duty rosters in such a way that when there are going to be conflicts of interest, they would be weighted towards us.
Okay.
I don't want to see actual conflicts break out. There's somebody who's, for example, they talk a lot more around somebody of a similar background. I will make sure that I put that person in with somebody who has that background.
Okay. So I don't recall reading the pages for it. Joe, you can let me know if it's there or not. But to me, this sounds like what used to be called in 1E as a gated challenge, 2 simple challenges, kind of one following the other. So the first one is going to be just a difficulty 1 challenge, and it is basically just to get the records and know the basic information on the prime players in the colony.
Okay.
The
And
second
just to
would
back up,
be
to back up 1 second, sorry to interrupt. I had an extra bonus momentum that had to be spent because I bought a threat.
okay.
And that, I think I have to use that as, I think I can use
An information question.
Yeah, an information question. I have an idea of where Commander Frank sits, but is it possible to get a better read on one of the other 2? Actually, to be honest, I think I have a decent read on Shaw if he's still the XO of the Collins.
Oh yeah, because Shaw is actually a player in game, I'm not going to have you roll for that.
Okay.
And he formerly served under you. I would say we'll just pop a chat in Discord.
Okay.
And for those listening to the show, we do have a Discord for our various casts of our various games. If you want to join, those are closed for those players and GMs. However, there is open chat that's available in the Discord and in the doobly-doo. Shout out to Matt Colville. We will certainly provide links to Discord so you can see some of the just general conversation and merriment that we like to have around here as we start transitioning to Discord as a better means of engaging with the community. So for Shaw, just reach out, chat with him. If there's anything specific,
yeah, Marty, I'll reach out to Marty.
He'll get you covered there. As far as the others, yeah, as an information question, you had 1 bonus that had to be spent there. You have to spend 1 of your momentum, dropping into 3 momentum. The ones that are tight with Pritchard are the most worried about a veritable Night of the Long Knives with people who had been part of Pritchard's crew. But they also saying the quiet thing to you, which is, as a group, we did things with Pritchard that were outside of the norm for Starfleet. it would make sense if somebody who's never been out on the inside of this didn't like that and wanted to move us around. They're worried about, does it negatively impact their career? They're worried about that more than just being reassigned. They're worried about not having the right types of people, i.e., your group, on the wall. They consider themselves, they consider this group, they consider the various teams that have been assembled to be the ones on the wall protecting Starfleet from this one specific threat. They are worried about what happens if somebody who's not in the know gets there. As XOs, they're advising about their individual missions and that, but between you and them, because you've been cultivating this long-standing relationship with them, they are looking for direction on how do they transfer the knowledge that collectively these various crews have to an incoming administration who may not be in the know.
Got it.
All right. And as I was saying, in regards to the mini gated challenge we have here, the first one is going to be a 1. That's just to get the basics on the big players on the colony. And then the next challenge is only going to be a 2, which is rearranging your crew to optimum efficiency, effectively creating that opportunity trait to improve relations with the colonial administration.
All right. So I'm looking at what we would leverage for that first challenge. Looking through systems, so that would probably be control.
It really depends on your approach. If you're just looking to find out info that's going to help you make the best decisions, that could very well be either insight or reason, and that could be security or command. I think either one would be appropriate. That's more about your specific approach. If you're going to security, it's more like, I need to know much about them so I can have the best advantage. And I would say your the answer you receive will be more steered towards which department you use, regardless of success.
I think the second one's going to be security reason. I'm just trying to figure out the first one. So
okay, if you're just looking at records, it very much could just be reason command, because you're just pouring through and making sure you got the right dossiers.
All right. Reason and command. I didn't declare a focus. I'm trying to say I have a good focus for this. I don't think this would fall into the clandestine operative. I don't have a focus for this one. So it is just a single success.
Okay. Which is all you need. So you hit the mark. The primary players on the colony, which, and in general, you would have had this anyway, so I will also follow up with the base information. You have Administrator Mavor. The basics for Mavor is a middle-aged Talarian. He's known to be fairly smart. He's known to be fairly considering as far as when he makes decisions, he doesn't make them quickly, and they're usually fairly well reasoned. And generally, he's known to be fairly cautious and reserved, or at least that's what the common reports would be based on what Starfleet has on the individual. In charge of overall security and safety for the colony is an individual known as Major Lennox. He is a commander within the Talarian Republic Guard. Lennox is a tall, very broad-shouldered, physically imposing individual. Is pretty much almost always seen in his official uniform / armor. Rarely seen out of that. He is known to be extremely rigid and very conservative, really leaning into the old Talarian ways, which have changed. One of the things that the Talarians had to do in order to really entreat and improve relations with Starfleet was radically change an element that was very important in their culture. They are well known to be a fairly misogynistic culture. That was one of the issues that they had with Starfleet when they had conflict years ago. We're talking pre-TNG era, and it was during the TNG era that they had additional contacts with Starfleet. In the years that since they have softened on that stance, in that the women among the Talarian people are no longer by law held out of positions, jobs, things like that. Their laws have actually changed, but there are still remnants of that old guard, literally and figuratively, still in place. He's one of those. And then lastly, Halara, she is the scientist who's actually in charge of the deployment of the Solar Shade mission. And she's the one that would have the most expertise on what's going on with that particular system, why they need help, all of those things. And she is known to be a bit of a maverick. We're 20 years after a change, if you've achieved this level of success in a society that has banned women from even being in this type of position, and you are the number one scientist for a colony world of several thousand and an important one, that tells you this is clearly a person of skill and drive to have gotten herself into a position in a 20-year time span.
So definitely pair Tanari up with her along with somebody who can sort of track more attention. Anyways, all right, and I didn't make the second roll. That was going to be security reason, I think I said.
I believe so.
Yes. Okay. And that would be one success as well.
Okay. Which reminds me, on both of these rolls, the ship was supposed to roll with you, and that could have resulted in momentum on the first roll and can result in success on this one. If you want to roll for the ship on the first one, Lacey, I'll let you grab that roll if you'd be so kind.
You shouldn't have asked me. 15.
15. Oops. All right, so no extra momentum on the first roll. And Joe, would you kind of have to roll for the DC on the second roll?
All right, and what are we looking for our stats for the DC? Peter's command?
Correct.
All right. I've got a 12, which is not enough.
Okay. You're not able to optimize any kind of schedules, but honestly, that kind of tracks with a smaller crew. The opportunity to optimize your work when you're dealing with potentially at least one person who might not even want to deal with women, there's certainly a drive to, on some level, I want things to go smoothly, but I'm certainly not feeding this particular beast. So there's just no way with your crew as diverse as it is to really, the things that he would probably chafe against, there's no way to morally make the kinds of changes to impact that in a positive way.
Got it.
All right, and that brings us to Captain Tobor. For those who may have missed the tail end of our last episode, formerly Commander Sabian Tobor was actually promoted to Captain Sabian Tobor. So he actually has a whole new pip on the collar.
Absolutely. So essentially, I want to do a similar thing that the XO was doing in prepping for this mission. From my scientific background, I really want to dive into the tech of this solar sail because to me, in my mind, it seems like it's most likely an unintended consequence of the solar sail, and something about the radiation on that planet is what was maintaining the evolutionary ecosystem, and by messing with it, it's what these storms are getting up to. So that's where I'm going to focus my effort. So I'm going to dive into all the whatever information they were able to provide us on specs and tech and do the reading on that in preparation.
Excellent. Your challenge here is going to be fairly easy because there's a scientist who's here who wants to publish and wants results to be known. But the complication is there is a security person who will redact anything they feel is of military significance. So your complication range, basically running up against redacted information, is going to be a 19 or 20. Your difficulty is only going to be a 2 here.
Okay. So I'm going to use insight and science to look at the specs and tech and solar stellar radiation models on the ecosystem and all that good jazz. I am a Trill, so I'm going to use my Trill talent that in one of my past lives, one of my past hosts had a focus in this type of stellar ecology or whatever appropriate focus would be.
Okay. And just as a minor correction, it's a solar shade, not a sail.
Okay.
And the idea is to basically shield large swaths of the colony from direct solar radiation. They don't have a strong magnetosphere to handle that work. But on the top end, basically the starward facing side of the solar shield, are giant solar panels which channel and direct energy to the planet. So basically, the same device that is structured to protect them from solar radiation is also providing a large swath of the energy that the planet uses, with the exception of having to have some micro fusion cores and things of that nature, because the
Yeah.
Talarians are not as advanced as the Federation in general. They are able to power their cities and their other things through direct solar radiation. And basically, the larger the shield gets, the more habitable areas of the planet there are for various things, and the more power they're able to generate. So, literally, for every X amount of hectares that they populate, there needs to be new
Even in the
pieces of.
Federation, solar collecting technology is still the gold standard because it's taking passive radiation energy that's already being emitted by the star and
Yep.
collecting it, whereas any kind of warp thing takes a
Yep.
lot of power to get the fusion started.
Yep.
So it's always easier to just collect
Mhm.
solar radiation.
And aside from development of your cells and panels and things of that nature, it's a resource less intensive process.
Yeah,
And part of this technology is definitely based on lessons learned from various Dyson sphere studies over the years. So,
of course. So I'm going to buy a third die with momentum.
excellent. That brings us to
Uh,
two.
Insight science. Ooh, I got a 2 and an 11. So I got 5 successes.
Excellent.
Look at that.
All right. And I said there was a difficulty of 2 with 5 successes. That gives you 3 momentum back. As far as what you're able to determine, it's very straightforward. It is just that it's a giant, basically solar panel, one direction, and then underneath the layers of the solar collection devices is a physical shield as well as a layer of energy electromagnetic shield. So a good portion of the solar energy that's collected is actually powering what the thing does. So it's a self-powering thing with the residual energy being enough to power parts of the planet. And those are being transmitted by various means. But the idea is it's a fairly large setup. There's a couple things. It has to be positioned correctly at the right elevation from the planet, directed at the correct angles, all of that. Additionally, that field inside must be generated just so and calibrated. So that's the information you have at this stage.
All right. I'm going to spend my bonus momentum for patient for a question. Why didn't they just go with a standard dome biosphere setup? Like, why create a ginormous gazebo, for lack of a better term?
Mm, okay. So your bonus momentum plus 1 momentum, bringing you back down to 3, if I'm correct. Is that right?
No, so the difficulty was 2. I got 5 successes. So we generated 3 bonus, and then my fourth one is my patient one. So I'll spend that one, and so we're plus 3 momentum from where we started at the beginning of the roll.
Okay. So I added 3 momentum to where we were, and that left you with 5 total.
Okay.
And if you spend your bonus and one of those, that leaves you with 4 total.
I'm just spending the 1 for the extra question right now.
Oh, so your ability lets you get an extra question for 1 momentum, or is it 2?
That's just the standard. More information is a 1 for 1.
Oh, for some reason I've been playing that as a 2. That's
Oh,
good to know. I'll
no,
have
because
to
the
adjust
science
it.
officer, they get an extra question for free.
Okay, got it. I will keep that in mind and make those adjustments.
It
All
is
right,
momentum gets you the trait or the
gotcha.
advantage.
All right. So,
Uh,
with that information, the reason why they did this is they are not looking to be contained. The Talarian people culturally do not like to be contained. They will fly in ships, they will go places, and it's not a claustrophobia thing. It's just culturally, they don't want to be contained to a dome. That's something that they're not keen on. Two, they feel that this, because it's cheap and effective, will allow them to have the power to populate this planet. The idea is the more open they can make the planet, the more they can farm and collect. Basically, this is a colony which they wish to make an agrarian community. This solar shade they want to expand so they can basically be doing industrial farming on this colony site. As the region expands, there's going to be more people to feed that planet
mhm.
that I described for the XO, where they had the transition of power. those people culturally do not like replicated food and experiences. They like everything to be natural and legit. So for the Talarians looking to expand their influence through trade versus aggression, like they had been, it makes sense if they were a big food producer. So they have control over a lot of space. Finding planets like this that can be used for natural food production makes them a
Yeah.
very good trade partner.
I guess then I think either, depending on how you want to handle it, Lee, if I could spend another 2 momentum to create the advantage trait. Or first, I guess I'll ask the question, is my hypothesis that by blocking the radiation from getting to the planet on a certain part of it, but not others, is disturbing the ecosphere environment and is essentially the source of these storms. So I guess that might be another momentum spend.
Based on success and based on the information that you have, I think that's a fair hypothesis to make. Nothing in the information you have would deny that. That is a good working theory that
Okay.
fits the situation you have with no problems, no questions asked. Whether or not there are other possible causes, that would be a separate kind of question.
And that's going to be
But
one we're going to want to run the scans and tests when we get there with the high
exactly.
resolution sensors and all
Yep.
that stuff. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right now, you have a working theory based on all the information you have and a little extra research and thought about it, and that all stands to reason. To rule that out, you would have to scan and find something that would change those details.
Right. And then the other thing in the a couple months period, I wanted to check in with Dorai when she got back from the side quest mission and how that went and get the debriefing on the scans done on the radiation.
No role necessary here. The reports will have bubbled up through your science officer while she was doing all the number crunching. So she's got really strong data. Dora and the team that she went with did a great job in collecting information. There were no aha moments or, oh my God, we just found this. There's nothing that like popped out as, good Lord, we found a thing. But to Dora's credit, this created a swath of base information that compared to other things you have come across and are likely to come across, you are now going to potentially be in a much better situation to address matters that deal with this phenomenon. 100% success from a data collection mission, despite the struggles with the origin of the mission. It definitely accomplished the task, which, to Nilan's credit, she said, if you'd just come to me with what you wanted to do, we'd have found a way. You're on the right track, but you went about it all wrong.
All right, yeah, that's pretty much what I want to, besides other stuff that's running in the background. This is where I wanted to be prepped for this mission.
All right, 15 minutes before coming out of warp in the Dvorak system, the bridge crew is assembled. I will say Lieutenant Alana Kem is your acting chief of security at this point.
Yeah.
That's something you can make permanent throughout the course of this mission or at any time during this mission if that's what you'd like to do. And she is maintaining the bridge for the time being while the rest of you are in here. Unless you would like her to attend as well, leaving Lusant in charge of the bridge.
Yeah, I want security here. I also want Dr. New to join us
Okay.
I want essentially the full department heads.
Okay. Everybody is assembled in the briefing room, and Captain, the floor is yours.
Very good. Ladies and gentlemen, you've all read the mission briefing, and we are about to arrive at our destination. I've been down in the science lab tinkering around on myself because I know how complex a biome ecosystem is. And from what they've been doing with this solar shade and disrupting the evolutionarily balanced meteorology of this planet by blocking out sufficiently large amount of that radiation coming in, my working theory is that the shade itself is in some way disrupting and causing these storms. Mr. Tenari, when we come out of orbit, I want you to work with Lieutenant Nealon to start scanning the biosphere and atmosphere and start building a computer model and being able to determine what, if any, effect the radiation shade is having or is not having. From my study and of the Talarians, it's going to take irrefutable evidence to tell them that, hey, your solar shade that's going to let you terraform this planet into a habitable space is actually causing all this damage. So we're going to need to be able to show our homework really quickly.
Aye, sir.
And then EXO, I want you to work with security. I know the Talarians are coming around to a more outward going and multicultural perspective, but not all of them. I want to make sure that there's no incidents between any of our crew and any of the, shall we say, more conservative thinking Talarians. I want to minimize that as much as possible.
I will nod and indicate that I'm planning on meeting with Major Lennox as soon as we arrive, just to ensure that whatever precautions they want to take, we are aware of ahead of time.
Very good. Take Lieutenant Alana with you in that meeting, and I believe Mr. Tenari, you and Lieutenant Nilan are going to join me with a meeting with the administrator. So we can get the interfacing and get what data they are allowed to give us, and then try and figure out what they're not telling us, and then figure out what the real problem is, and then fix the real problem in a way that does not make the situation any worse.
I was going to ask if we had any information as to what the actual disaster was.
So from what we've gotten right now, it's uncontrollable and increasing storms. Once we get in orbit and can start scanning the atmosphere and environment, maybe put together some atmospheric probes so we can get some readings. Neilong, I know you and your team have been working on that, and I'm sure we're going to be ready to deploy those when we get permission, because I don't want to start launching stuff into their atmosphere without first asking the Talarians if it's okay to do so. Anyone else have anything pressing before we arrive at the planet, or we know kind of the standard procedure and we will proceed according to plan? All right, then let's be about it, everyone.
Actually, sir, I do have one question. Do we know if these storms will interfere with transporter operations, or are we going to have to take a shuttle down?
That's an excellent question. We'll have to see once we get there. Mr. Tenari, connect with Chief Redat, and when we come out of orbit, and assess the transporter interference, if any, from these storms.
Yes, sir.
Okay. With that, the captain has dismissed the briefing room. People stand up, get back to their areas. Lieutenant Tenari, if you, with the assistance of Chief Redat, would care to make that roll to see if you can pull any information about transporters and whether or not they should be functional or be interfered with by these storms.
Okay, this would probably be reason science.
Yes.
All right, and I have transporters and replicators as a focus. I will buy an extra dice with 1 momentum.
Okay, bringing you to 3.
Procedural compliance, I don't believe will work because this is a science roll, not an engineering roll.
That is correct.
9, 13, 17, so that's 2 successes.
Okay, and I did forget to give you the difficulty. This is a 1, so you cleared that.
Okay, we need someone to roll for the chief and someone to roll for the DC.
Yeah, if somebody wants to roll for the DC, then I will grab the chief.
Do you want sensor science, I assume, for the DC? Would be
Accurate.
a good sensor science. A 13, which I got a 13. Right on the nose.
She blinded me with science.
All right. And with the chief, the target number is going to be 11 with a 4. That will be a success.
That's a total of 4 successes, I believe, on a difficulty 1.
So that would be 3. The base information is at their current levels, the storms present 0 challenge whatsoever. The storm trait is Storm 1. If it advances to Storm 2, it will make things possibly a little tenuous. So we're looking at an extended complication range if it hits Storm 2, and that would be a 19 to 20. It would be the 2 more difficulty and the added complication. If for some reason the storm hits 3, that's going to extend to 18, 19, and 20. And if the storm gets to 4, now we're talking catastrophic, we're talking structural damage. Anything 3, 4, and 5 has the potential for loss of life. 5 would be this colony is getting wiped off the board kind of thing. And complications increase accordingly, 4 and 5.
Right. Tap my comm badge. Tanari to captain.
Go ahead.
We've just analyzed the storm. It shouldn't cause any complications now. But if the storms get more intense, there may be some interference with the transporters.
All right, we'll have the chief keep a sharp eye on that if and when we're down on the planet.
I would also suggest we have science keep an eye on the meteorological activity, give us regular updates on forecasts.
Of course.
Based on this information, I'm going to ensure that crewmen's Murrock and Mabrin are essentially on call to get in the Abbott at a moment's notice and get down.
Okay.
Just in case there is a need for an evac. They both have skills that would assist in that.
So we'll have them chilling in the flight ops room adjacent to the shuttle bay. Abbott is prepped and ready. So as opposed to a standard ready 5 condition, the Abbott will be prepped in a ready 1, which basically means you say the word as part of your action, and the Abbott can be flying by the next round, or if you make the roll, they can be flying that round.
Fantastic.
All right.
So I tap my comm badge. Captain of the XO. Mr. Sonari confirmed that the storms are sufficiently light now to not interfere with transporter range, but I think it'd be a good idea to have our flight shuttles on standby in case we have to evac quickly.
Sounds good. And then I will make those arrangements as soon as I am aware of the information.
Sounds good. All right. So with that, you are prepped. You come out of warp.